Professor Mpho Matlala is from the College of Law and School of Criminal Justice at UNISA, and he joins us to further unpack this. Prof, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time. Well, that story there coming out of the DA before, in fact, we talk about the ad hoc committee today. Just give us your reaction then following this resignation from the Democratic Alliance as well as Parliament by Dion George.
Unathi, politics being politics, there will always be infightings and discrediting one another. But be that as it may, I really am not a political person or political scientist, and in fact, mine would have been more of an interest on the ad hoc committee today. But yeah, we live in a very dynamic democracy, and you will always have politicians accusing one another of this or that, but such is the nature of politics and the evolution of political parties themselves.
All right, let's then talk about the ad hoc committee. Of course, they've adjourned for a few moments. The head of Police Crime Intelligence Division, Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo, is testifying. He's touched on a number and a range of issues under that evidence lead. How, when he was appointed to lead the division, he was talking about how he found abuse of funds, fraud and corrupt practices, saying that the division was riddled with maladministration. Just give us a sense then in terms of just some of the key highlights that you can draw from his testimony so far.
Well, I think this is exactly part of the reason why he has been targeted. When he came into the space, the crime intelligence component was a free-for-all. It was a free flow where everybody could do what they like. And all these systemic and structural problems, you'll remember, date as far back as the time of General Mudluli, that much we can remember, probably even predates the time of General Mudluli, where you would have then the slush funds being abused. We've heard allegations of how the secret fund was used to purchase homes and luxuries and pay for holidays and all these sorts of things. So when he came in, he put the brakes on the gravy train. I am not surprised that by doing that he would have stepped on so many toes, and which would explain why he would be in conflict with some of his colleagues, and some of the colleagues would then have very powerful spouses. You would remember the head of IDEC, whose spouse is having a problem with General Khumalo as his line manager, and I really don't buy the story that we have been sold, that myself and my husband are very professional. We don't discuss these things at home. And, when you take everything in its totality, not just only that, then you realize that some of the toes that General Khumalo have stepped on is really very powerful actors within the political domain who really are responsible for the systemic failures because of lack of or diminishing governance and creating a culture wherein the system would fail to their own benefits, including allowing the system to be infiltrated by criminals because the entire network of corruption and looting and criminal syndicates really has its rootings and genesis right at the top, at the political realm. So really there is many of our politicians who will not be surprised if in future they are directly implicated.
And interestingly, of course, just remembering, of course, that Khumalo is also the project manager for the political killings task team. He is a very significant key witness, as we've also heard from members of parliament. But he also spoke about, what keeps these syndicates alive. I mean, he painted that picture of how they need to entrench themselves not only within SAPS, but also within, political spaces, communities. And just speak to us about how vital that is, particularly as you look at what the ad hoc committee is meant to be looking at in as far as, criminality within the justice system.
Unathi, organized crime is a business enterprise, only that it is criminal, of course, not legitimate, but it's a business enterprise. And what is the key imperative for the survival of any business enterprise? Just like criminal enterprises, it's maintaining the value chains. And therefore, bribing police, magistrates, having tenders, those are all the value chains that ensures the survival of a criminal enterprise. If you look at tenderpreneurship, for instance, how it factors into the whole value chain of criminality, monies can be laundered. Dirty money can be cleaned through shell companies that have been established, and that will the companies that have tenders awarded, but then the monies that are coming in versus the contracts that they have. If you investigate very deeply, you'll realize that there are suspicious activities. Of course, from the magistrates, from the prosecutors, from the police, one requires protection at the level of cases not being investigated properly, and at the level of granting of bail, or even not being found guilty or receiving sentences that are not really proportionate to the crime that the person is being convicted for. So that entire ecosystem, just like in businesses, is what the criminal enterprise needs to survive. If a criminal enterprise operates in isolation, then it is not organized crime. It is an isolated crime. It's individual crime, because it's not networked without those value chains. Organized crime is really defined as such, networked in nature.
Prof, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Professor Mpho Matlala is from the College of Law and School of Criminal Justice at UNISA.